Leadership is often misunderstood because many people assume it works like the games we grew up playing. In those games, there were clear rules, clear boundaries, and a clear moment when someone won and someone else lost. You could look at the scoreboard, hear the final whistle, and know the game was over. Because of this mindset, many leaders step into positions of authority believing that success has the same structure. They believe there is a finish line to cross, a title to earn, or a moment when they can finally declare victory. But leadership does not work that way, and treating it as if it does is one of the most damaging mistakes a leader can make. In reality, leadership is not a finite game. There is no final moment where the work is done. There is no permanent win that guarantees future success. Organizations that once dominated their industries can disappear within a decade if they stop adapting. Teams that perform exceptionally well one year can struggle the next if trust, purpose, and clarity are lost. Leadership exists in a constantly changing environment, and the only real objective is to remain strong enough, flexible enough, and united enough to continue forward. When leaders believe they are playing a finite game, their decisions become narrow and short-sighted. They focus heavily on quarterly results, rankings, and visible wins that can be celebrated quickly. These leaders push harder for faster outcomes, often at the expense of people. They demand more hours, more pressure, and more sacrifice without offering protection or meaning in return. On the surface, this may produce impressive numbers, but beneath the surface, something fragile is forming. An infinite game requires a completely different mindset. Instead of asking how to win, leaders must ask how to endure. Instead of obsessing over beating competitors, they must focus on building an organization that can survive uncertainty, disruption, and failure. This means making decisions that may not pay off immediately, but strengthen the system over time. It means investing in people even when the return cannot be measured on a spreadsheet. In an infinite game, success is not defined by outperforming others, but by maintaining the capacity to keep playing. That capacity comes from trust, learning, and adaptability. When people feel safe, they are more willing to experiment. When they are encouraged to speak honestly, problems are addressed before they become crises. When leaders prioritize long-term stability over short-term recognition, teams develop resilience rather than fear. Leaders who understand the infinite nature of their role do not panic during setbacks. They recognize that failure is not the opposite of success, but a natural part of progress. Instead of reacting emotionally or placing blame, they focus on lessons and growth. This approach builds confidence within teams because people know that mistakes will not end their careers and challenges will not erase their value. The danger of treating leadership as a finite game is that it creates a culture of comparison and anxiety. Employees begin competing with one another instead of collaborating. Innovation slows because risk feels unsafe. Loyalty disappears because people sense that they are being used to achieve temporary goals rather than being developed for long-term contribution. Over time, the organization may still function, but it loses its soul. Leaders who embrace the infinite game shift their attention from control to stewardship. They see themselves as caretakers of something that existed before them and will continue after them. Their responsibility is not to extract maximum output, but to leave the organization stronger than they found it. They understand that their true impact is measured not by what they achieve during their tenure, but by what continues to thrive after they are gone. This perspective changes how leaders treat success and pressure. Instead of celebrating short bursts of achievement, they focus on consistency. Instead of exhausting people to reach artificial targets, they create systems that support sustainable performance. They accept that progress may be slower, but it will be deeper and more meaningful. Understanding that leadership is not a finite game does not remove competition, ambition, or accountability. It reframes them. The aim is not to defeat others, but to improve continuously. not to dominate, but to endure, not to win once, but to build something that can keep going, even when circumstances change and leaders themselves. Short-term wins can feel intoxicating. They provide immediate validation, visible success, and a sense of control in an uncertain world. Numbers go up, targets are met, applause follows. For many leaders, these moments become proof that they are doing the right things. But what often goes unseen is the hidden cost of chasing quick victories. When leaders prioritize short-term wins above all else, they frequently trade away the very things that make long-term success possible. The pressure to deliver fast results pushes leaders to make decisions that are convenient rather than wise. Deadlines become more aggressive, expectations rise without support, and people are asked to give more without being given clarity or protection in return. At first, teams may respond with effort and commitment, driven by urgency or fear of falling behind, but this kind of performance is borrowed, not built. Eventually, the bill comes due. One of the first casualties of short-term thinking is trust. Trust is fragile and slow to build, but incredibly easy to damage. When employees see leaders changing priorities constantly, cutting corners, or making promises they cannot keep, confidence erodes. People begin to question whether leadership truly has their best interests at heart, or if they are simply being used to reach the next milestone. Once trust is weakened, every decision is viewed with suspicion, and even well-intentioned actions are doubted. Another cost of short-term wins is burnout. Pushing people beyond sustainable limits may produce impressive results for a time, but it drains energy, creativity, and motivation. Overworked teams stop thinking strategically and start operating in survival mode. Innovation disappears because there is no mental space for experimentation. Mistakes increase, morale drops, and eventually, talented individuals leave, not because they lack commitment, but because they feel exhausted and unvalued. Short-term success also encourages a culture of fear and competition. When results are the only measure of worth, people focus on protecting themselves rather than helping one another. Information is withheld, mistakes are hidden, and collaboration becomes risky. Leaders may believe they are driving performance, but in reality, they are creating an environment where people do just enough to survive. The organization may still function, but it becomes brittle and vulnerable to disruption. The most dangerous loss caused by short-term wins is the erosion of purpose. When goals change every quarter and decisions are driven solely by immediate outcomes, people lose sight of why their work matters. They stop feeling connected to a larger mission and begin seeing their roles as transactional. Work becomes something to endure rather than something to believe in. Without purpose, motivation fades, and loyalty becomes conditional. Long-term success requires leaders to think beyond the next result. It demands the courage to make decisions that may look slower or less impressive in the moment, but create stability over time. This includes investing in training, developing future leaders, and protecting culture even when it is inconvenient. These choices rarely generate instant praise, but they build a foundation that can support growth for years. Leaders who resist the temptation of short-term wins understand that progress is not always visible immediately. They measure success not just by outcomes, but by the health of their people and systems. They pay attention to engagement, learning, and trust, knowing that these elements are leading indicators of future performance. When challenges arise, they rely on the strength of their culture rather than panic-driven decisions. Choosing long-term thinking does not mean ignoring results or lowering standards. It means recognizing that sustainable performance comes from consistency, not intensity. It means balancing urgency with care, ambition with responsibility. Leaders who adopt this mindset create organizations that can weather change, adapt to uncertainty, and recover from setbacks without losing their identity. Short-term wins may deliver quick applause, but long-term thinking builds lasting impact. Leaders who understand this trade-off stop chasing temporary victories and start focusing on what truly endures: trust, resilience, and the ability to keep moving forward without breaking the people who make success possible.